Welcome everybody. Great to be here. These are good ones today. We got some good reporters today, so good. I wish Agert was here, but there's probably something big going on that we don't know about. Just great another week. Wanted to highlight. I'm a member of the State Bar of Michigan. You guys know that. As a constitutional attorney, I'm very pleased. The State Bar of Michigan is out there promoting me. So you look at this. They're out there giving this to their members, out there spreading my message. And I heard it went over very well, by the way, at the State Bar of Michigan. So the last thing they want is a whole bunch of new laws to learn. But I will correct them. It's actually 16 public acts and one local act. One local act, not 17 public acts. And by the way, it was the first public act in like 37 years, all right? But I think we've been executing on our goals of, we had 74 public acts last year. And I was so grateful for Americans for Prosperity recognizing me as their Legislator of the Year, where they highlighted this. They said 74 in 2025, which is an accomplishment we're very proud of. We blocked a lot of things. I'll get into those in a second. And this year, it's a little ahead of last year. We have 17 public acts. I think we had 6 public acts at this time last year. And it wasn't until October where we had our 17th public act, which we haven't had yet this year because we only have 16 public acts and 1 local act. But it would be the same. It'd be 16 public acts in October. So we're very, I'm grateful to the State Bar of Michigan out there giving us that, giving us those props. And just to go through it though, I want to kind of want to highlight some of these things if I can find it. So I just want to lay out some of the reasons why we've been blocking things. I mean, if you look in Governor Whitmer's final year, a lot of her good ideas are gone. And so the things that we see coming from Democrats include prevailing wage expansions. We've seen the predictive scheduling they're proposing, where if you're a small business and you have to change somebody's hours because somebody called in sick and then they fine you like crazy, that's a bad one. You see the hospital staffing ratios that would really put our hospitals out of business if they, and you look at those, I mean, there aren't even enough nurses in the state to do the hospital staffing ratios the Democrats are proposing. We've seen their proposal they call the Workers' Bill of Rights to ban the independent contractors. That goes from, you know, everybody from your people that are on, you know, delivering you StubHub or delivering your meals. What's that called? DoorDash. Yeah, the DoorDash. All the way to your Uber driver, all the way to, you know, people that prefer to be independent contractors because they can work for multiple companies, multiple employers, and then they have their own freedom to work for who they want to. Democrats want to ban that. We saw the Democrats in support of letting every local government set their own minimum wage. You guys know if we did that, you know, you look at this like Gardner White, right? They're expanding all over the place. They just built one in Portage. If every Gardner White had a different labor policies and a different minimum wage, it'd be very hard to expand to the scale that you see them doing across the state. They want to ban plastic bags. They want to promote a homeless bill of rights. We know they want all the rent controls, and the rent controls, that leads to less investment in your apartment building. So if you live in an apartment building and there are rent controls, they're not going to do the maintenance, they're not going to make the improvements to the property. The rent controls don't work, and what happens is you have fewer apartments. People won't build more homes if there are rent controls. And one of our biggest problems in this state is not enough housing inventory, and rent controls will make that worse. We know that the Democrats want to undo the work requirements for Medicaid and for SNAP. Lots of these bad ideas, really. You know, you look through it. And so we're just saying, look, there's not a lot of great things here, so we don't have to do rent control, and we don't have to ban independent contractors and come up with all kinds of new regulations that are going to make it harder to to employ people in the state. And so we're just saying we don't need to do that. There are a few things that we're trying to do. I've talked about some of them. You know, we're trying to cut property taxes. We're trying to make health care more affordable. We're trying to lower your energy bill. And so where there's room to do deals on those things, we can get new public acts, but we're not going to do all this crazy liberal fantasy list. We're not going to do that. And if the Democrats ever took back control of the House, which won't happen as long as I'm here, the first thing they'll do is go to this agenda of items that that they failed to get to during the lame duck session last time. So they'll go right back to it, in their first 100 days and radically change the state, but fortunately, I'm not going to let that happen. But just to walk through some of the other things going on, I mean, you see the great work that's going on in the House Oversight Committee with Jay DeBoyer and his committee. I mean, we had a great hearing just a few days ago where we were going and asking questions about the Treasury Department. And you can see the Treasury Department is not very well run right now. And there's all kinds of problems with people's tax returns. You file your tax returns with the state. Many people haven't gotten their returns yet. There's been all kinds of erroneous letters going out from the Treasury Department, creating a lot of confusion. And you saw Jay and the Oversight Committee take that on this week. And so there's a lot of great things going on with the Oversight Committee and also with the Appropriations Committee. You know, we went through every line item in the budget. We found that the actual dollars spent is $2 billion less than what the Democrats are asking for in the budget. And so we found we don't have to raise taxes. We don't have to raid the state rainy day fund. All we have to do is go to the real dollars spent, and we don't have to cut anything. And what we can do is we can actually make big investments in education, public safety, roads, local governments, many things. We can even put more money into the state rainy day fund. So I don't think that we measure a legislature based on the number of bills passed, but we should look at, you know, are you holding departments of government accountable? You know, we're working, you saw another hearing recently about all these state workers. And, you know, I was with Mayor Shore earlier this week. Mayor Shore in the city of Lansing has called for the city workers to come back, and now they're back at work. But yet the state buildings remain probably 80% empty based on the swipe card data that I've seen. And so, you know, people want their state workers coming back to work. I mean, I mentioned one example where, you know, we're trying to solve an issue with MDOT and we can't get it resolved because the MDOT and the Eagle, their computer systems don't talk to each other. And so the only way to get the issue resolved is to find one day when both of these workers are in the office and will come talk to each other. And that's delayed this issue for many months. So those are the kind of things that, that we're really looking at, right? And the Whitmer administration will try to say somehow it's easier, that the workers are more productive when they're not in the office. Nobody believes that. No one believes that at all. So I'm just saying, like, we need to get the workers back. And you saw Jay DeBoyer had a great committee on that. Jay DeBoyer held their feet to the fire. We got a lot of good information about that, and we're going to use that through the budget to try to put some more teeth into that to really bring those state workers back, because I don't think the people are getting good customer service from their state government when the workers aren't back. And those are the kind of oversight issues. It was kind of interesting. I don't know, when's the last time the Senate Oversight Committee met? And I have no idea. I don't know if they've ever met. And, you know, you hear Democrats calling for investigations and things, and they don't ask the Democrat-run Senate Oversight Committee because they don't meet, right? I mean, that would be impossible to get them to do anything. So I also wanted to highlight this. Let me see this is really important. So, you know, I hear false reporting from the media about the Democrat trifecta. Now, many of the things I've laid out are true about the Democrat trifecta. They wanted to do all of those things. But I just want to remind you that if you go back and look at the July 1 deadline, that's a deadline for presentment to the governor. And even during the Democrat trifecta, neither time did they meet the July 1 deadline. So I just want to point that out to everybody that falsely reports that it's like they hit the July 1 deadline, the 2 years the Democrats controlled everything, and then you look at the facts and they did not. They presented on July 24 the first year and July 15 the second year. But yet we didn't see any of the, I think if these legislative Democrats put this much effort into helping us solve the problem of fixing our education budget, including focusing on real life skills and preparing kids for actual careers, and solving the literacy issue that we're working on that involves early childhood spending, the letters training, which we're going to vote on today, hopefully. That's a big one we're working on today, the letters training. And what that is training the teachers on how to teach phonics, which now they call the science of reading. So we need the teachers to learn how to teach phonics because they're not teaching phonics right now, and its reading scores are 44th in the country. So we're going to hopefully move on legislation today that will help us with our literacy crisis in the state, and will be an important part of the school budget, which is let's get the letters training, let's get the early childhood spending, and with that, let's also put in place accountability through the third grade reading law budget implementation bill. And so you need all three. You need tools for what to do if the kids can't read. You need more early childhood intervention through the early childhood spending. And you need phonics, and you need to train the teachers on how to teach phonics. So if the Democrats were putting a little more effort into that instead of organizing the press conferences to kind of change the history, rewrite history, I think we'd be a lot better off. So I just wanted to make sure everyone sees the facts. No, the July 1st deadline was never met during the Democrat trifecta. So I'm very excited that we have some new legislation today that we're introducing. This has been long anticipated. Very excited. The Hospital Cost Review Board is being introduced today. And this is a really critical legislative effort led by me to lower the cost of health care dramatically. You look at what nearby states are doing, like Indiana. Indiana has done a similar version of this, which is intended to dramatically lower the cost of health care in Indiana. And so what we propose to do is create a new board that will be looking at the finances of all of these hospital systems and ensuring that they do not have rate increases in the future that are higher than the rate of inflation. Also, any rate increase by the hospitals would have to be approved by this board. So the maximum increase they could get would be the rate of inflation, but any increase they proposed would have to be approved by this board. And so you look at what they would be looking at. I mean, they would be looking at the the compensation of the executives. They would be looking at the costs that the hospital incurs, and really would be making a decision based on their expenditures, the cost of their operation, their revenue, their assets, their liabilities, labor costs, information on the scope of services, utilization information, a Medicare cost report, audited financial statements, and they would be looking at the value of the nonprofit tax exemption. They would be looking at detailed and clear data on the rate increases. So you look at all those factors, and then the hospital, the healthcare cost review board would be looking at that and saying, okay, we approve this rate increase, but not above the rate of inflation. Because one of the problems we have is we're giving these hospitals and the healthcare system billions and billions of dollars, and then they're always coming back and asking for more money and always saying they don't have any money. And then meanwhile, we're watching them acquire other systems. We're watching them build new buildings, we're watching all of their executives' pay go up considerably, and a lot of these hospital executives make 7 figures or more, millions. They're some of the most wealthy people in the state of Michigan are these hospital executives. But we're looking, if they're able to, the Hospital Cost Review Board will also look at any efforts to merge hospitals or acquire hospitals, and they will only allow those to continue if the rates go down by at least 2%. So if you do an acquisition or a merger, the rates must go down at least 2% or else they can't do it. Because they were selling us on the idea that the hospital systems would merge, and you see there's like 3 or 4 big systems now, and they're squeezing everybody else out, and that was supposed to lower costs. But all of the expert studies are saying it's leading to the dramatic increase of costs. So if they want to merge, they must lower their costs by 2% or else the board won't approve it, and they can't merge or acquire. Also, the other issue that the Hospital Cost Review Board will be looking at is ensuring that no hospital or hospital system acquires more than 8% of the statewide bed share or 3% of the statewide market share. Because what's happening, if you get one system that controls too much of the statewide share, they're raising the prices and they're reducing access. We're going to benefit from competition in this state, right? Hospital systems competing on quality of care, on affordability. We're not going to benefit from one hospital system or 2 or 3 buying up 30-40% of the statewide bed share and the statewide market share, and that's where things are trending. We're not going to let any hospital system control more than 15% of a Prosperity Region's bed share or 15% more of a regional market share. We're not going to let that happen anymore. These systems are getting way too big. Also, what we're going to do is because again, these big hospital systems are all nonprofits. And that means they don't pay sales tax, they don't pay use tax, which shortchanges our schools, but they also don't pay property taxes, which shortchanges our local governments. And so what we're proposing is that for a nonprofit hospital to continue to be a nonprofit hospital, they must reduce their prices by 10% upon this act becoming law. If they do not reduce their prices by 10%, then they don't get their nonprofit benefits anymore. They're not going to have that savings anymore. They're going to be required to pay the sales tax and pay the property taxes. Because why are they getting, they're getting this sweetheart deal as nonprofits, and then they're paying their executives millions of dollars. They're preying on all kinds of people with these medical debt, these predatory medical debt practices where they'll put a lien on your house and foreclose on your home if you had emergency surgery. They'll garnish your wages without a court order. They'll ruin your credit. And these are nonprofits that are doing this, and they're paying their executives 7 figures, and they're also you see all the new buildings they're building. They can build new buildings, but they can't lower their costs 10%. They shouldn't be nonprofits, because then at least they would fund our schools and local governments with their high prices. So the Hospital Cost Review Board will lower their cost by 10% and cap their prices at 200% of the Medicare price cap for all health services, and offer an incentive of 150% of Medicare price cap for cash services. So if you pay cash, you'll get a discount as well. But prices will never be allowed to be increased above the rate of inflation. And and we're going to really start to lower this cost of healthcare. So very excited about those bills being introduced today. I'm really hopeful we'll get a deal with the Democrats to make that a reality, to dramatically lower the cost of healthcare. You know, if you talk to these small businesses, I mean, their premiums are going up 30, 40% a year. If you talk to anyone in the state of Michigan, you know, their costs are going up for healthcare services. They're paying huge premiums, and yet they're still paying more and more out-of-pocket costs because the prices are so high. So we're going to take dramatic action to lower their costs through the Hospital Cost Review Board. And just for the you know, like the eagerts out there that love the details, we propose 5 members of this board. One will come from a list submitted by each quadrant leader, and the governor will have to pick off of those lists of 3 from each quadrant leader. So that's the Republican and Democrat leaders in the House and Senate. And then the 5th will be a selection of the governor. So that way we get some bipartisanship there and some balance, and I'm really hopeful we can make a big difference with the Hospital Cost Review Board, which we're introducing those bills today. You'll see those very shortly. I think we're introducing them today. Actually, we turned them in yesterday, so you guys will see them today. We're hoping to move forward very quickly on the Hospital Cost Review Board, and really to get a great deal that includes this moving forward. If the Democrats are serious about lowering the cost of health care, then hopefully they'll embrace this, along with my efforts to strike a bipartisan deal on the medical debt, to ban those predatory practices from the hospitals where they will put a lien and foreclose on your home, where they'll screw up your credit and they'll garnish your wages without a court order. We're going to stop that. And we're going to force hospital price transparency in that deal, where we force them to display their prices in a very easy to find place so people can understand the cost of their healthcare services. That won't be a mystery anymore. And if the hospitals refuse to do that, then they won't be able to collect any medical debt. That'll be the consequence. So those are 2 separate packages, but we're working on a deal on that one. And then as we go through the budget, we're working on a deal on the Hospital Cost Review Board as well. So I think that's all I have to cover today. I'll see if there are any questions. Hey, go ahead, Travers.
You mentioned yesterday on the House floor about how liquor being overseas has kind of impacted the budget negotiations and that process. Can you just go into a bit more detail about how that's kind of halted your advancements?
Yeah, so I mean, it's very clear to me that the state budget director, Jen Flood, is not authorized to negotiate targets at this time. The only thing that the governor's office has authorized the staff to discuss is policy bills. And it's been that way for probably 6 days. And so we all know that a way that a budget gets done is you have to get the 3 principals in the room and you have to work out the bigger items. So we have $2 billion more this year than we did last year to spend on school aid budget. Think about that. We put record money into schools last year, and because there's so much money coming in from the sales tax, which goes to schools, we have $2 billion more this year than we did last year. So the first thing that we have to figure out with the governor is how much of that school aid are we going to spend on schools, and how much of that is going to go to like universities or community college. And when there's $2 billion more than last year, you can see why in the Senate Democrat budget and the governor's budget, they propose taking a portion of that and spending it on universities. Because what that does is that frees up money that can be spent on the general fund. So you know, you look at their proposals, maybe you give 1.7 billion more to schools, or 1.8 billion more to schools. And then the other 200 million or 300 million goes to preventing cuts to important services. So I can understand why they're trying to make that argument and why they put that in their budgets. Because you think about it, 2 billion more than last year is a lot of money for schools, right? So a worst case scenario for schools would probably be like $1.5 billion more than last year. So when the schools talk about we don't know what we're doing, I mean, it's like, okay, well, the worst case scenario is a huge increase from last year, all right? It's just, is it a $1.5 billion increase or is it a $2 billion increase? And I will tell you, you look at all these other areas, whether it's roads, remember how hard it was to get $2 billion more money into roads? I mean, we had to do all kinds of difficult things to put $2 billion into roads last year. We had to cut $800 million of waste, fraud, and abuse. We had to agree to, what they called, the marijuana tax. We had to do some other things too that affected our federal way our taxes were collected on business, to do $2 billion into roads. And right like that, it just appears $2 billion for education more than last year. So, I think taking a minute to pause and think about that. I mean, I was blown away by that. Because the way it's covered in the media, you'd think it was like the same amount as last year and we're fighting. No, it's $2 billion more. So the first thing we have to do is figure out how much of that are we spending on higher ed? And how much of that are we spending on K through 12? Because we don't want to make drastic cuts to either one, right? We don't want to cut higher ed if we have all this extra money. I mean, think about the increase you could give to higher ed and schools if you figured out how to make a deal the right way on that. The second piece is how much money are we going to raise taxes? And we've seen all the Democrat proposals from the governor to raise, I think it's $800 million in new taxes. So your governor and I and Winnie Brinks have to figure that out, all right? Like, now my position is no taxes, no tax increases, but you got to figure that out. And then the third piece is, are we taking money from the rainy day fund? And you see the Senate Democrats and the governor both propose taking hundreds of millions of dollars out of the rainy day fund to fund the budget. So without really those three pieces of critical information, no one else can work on the budget. Because the only three people that can make those decisions are me, the governor, and Leader Brinks. Once we make those decisions and sign off on them, then we can come up with what they call targets, which is telling the subcommittee chairs, this is how much you're authorized to spend on the Michigan State Police budget. This is how much you're authorized to spend on the Eagle budget, MDOT budget, and on and on. Then the subcommittees can go to work, okay? So last year, when we were doing the budget, we'd made all those decisions before Governor Whitmer went overseas. And if you saw, I did not criticize her. Some of the media tried to get me to, and I actually defended her because I knew that at that time, it wasn't going to have an impact on the budget. The difference is, as we're less than 2 weeks out from the July 1 deadline, the governor's office has been in a holding pattern for the last 5 or 6 days. And as a result of that, we're no closer to a budget today than we were the last week when I did a press conference, right? And so what I see from the governor's office is all kinds of attempts to spin and confuse the media on this, but it's pretty simple. So, I would just say that for me, it's like, okay, if the governor's office is in a holding pattern and the state budget office is not authorized to talk about anything other than policy bills, I hate to say it, but, I think I'm just going to have to go get together with Leader Brinks and the Senate Democrats and do a deal. And perhaps we'll have to do a deal without the governor's office, and we'll put it on her desk and we'll see what happens. But, we're committed to getting a July 1 budget done. So if that's what we have to do, then that's what we'll do. And I will say, from the meetings and the conversations, I do see the Senate Democrats as more serious about trying to make a deal right now than the governor's office, which is in a holding pattern until the governor gets back from Luxembourg sometime later this week. Go ahead, Beth.
What repercussions, if any, will Jim DeSena face for his comments about Representative Thompson and the caucus?
So, I think whether it's Jim DeSena or Jamie Thompson, both of them are great members of our caucus. I mean, you look at Jim DeSena, he beat Alex Garza. He flipped that seat from Democrat to Republican. There are not a lot of people that could have done that. And I'm really grateful that Jim has worked with us to get property tax cuts over the line. He was with us 100% on the work project vote that stopped $360 million of waste, fraud, and abuse in the budget, and we won that one in court. Couldn't have done that without Jim. Just yesterday, Jim was there for us on the red dye vote, right? He's a very authentic guy. And you look at Jamie Thompson, right? Jamie Thompson is a very authentic person. She's been there on every single vote that we've needed her, including the kratom ban that never would have passed without her out of the House. And by the way, if you look at the New York Times, you guys should look at the New York Times. There's a lot of other progressive media that's embracing the kratom ban. So if you read that, maybe you guys will write better stories about it too. But anyway, on the kratom ban, Jamie Thompson was really critical. I was happy we could help Jamie last year, get her first public act. You guys know that Darren Camilleri had been blocking her from getting a public act for her first 2 years, and we were able to get that done last year, which was really critical for our blind people, that we made a big change for them because of Jamie Thompson. So they're both very authentic people. Jamie she took a seat that was pretty tough, and she's made it pretty safe. And I'm really proud of her for doing that. And I'd say of all the districts that I go through, there's probably no one in our caucus who's a better fit for their district than Jamie Thompson. I see it in every poll we do. I see it every time I'm down there. We were with her at that Downriver Kratom ban town hall that we did, and you could see it there. And I think they really respect her authenticity, and they really see, she's been through a lot of things in her life with her family, a lot of really painful things. And she's always been very upfront about that, and she's always used that to spur positive change, and to be there for other people that have gone through those things, and to really be an inspiration and a leader for people. And so, people attached to that, they feel that, and I think that's why Jamie has such a great connection to her district. It's not news to anybody that these two, they haven't always gotten along, and, that's a tension that we've managed through the caucus the whole time they've been here, right? But I think we need to step back and look at this and say, we all have disagreements inside the Republican Party. And I get frustrated with some of the Republicans at times. And at the end of the day, I keep going back to the fact that there's not big differences between the Republicans when it comes to issues like gender reassignment surgeries for kids. And when it comes to issues like that, you can count on both Jamie Thompson and Jim DeSena, and you couldn't count on one legislative Democrat, right? So those are the kind of things where I go back to and say, I'm happy I have Jim DeSena and Jamie Thompson here in the House. I'm grateful for both of them. And we'll work through it as a caucus, and we'll get to a place where we're working in harmony as a team. That's what we've got to do. We've done it all the 2 years, and we're going to continue to do what we've got to do to work toward it, because the people elected us to do a lot of things to block these radical Democrat bills, to lead on healthcare affordability, to cut property taxes. Not one Democrat would vote for that property tax cut. but Jim DeSanta and Jamie Thompson did. I mean, look at the Democrats' radical energy bills and what they did to take away local control in wind and solar. You know, when you look at issues like that, you see there's not a huge gap between Jamie Thompson and Jim DeSanta and me compared to the gap with the Democrats. So when you work together every day and you're really close to each other, tensions go out, but you know, we'll work through those tensions, and I think we'll come back, emerge through this stronger as a caucus. That's what we're going to do, and I'm looking forward to that.
So there won't be any questions for him?
Well, I gave you my answer, so go ahead.
What's different in this situation than, for example, the situations that Paul Mansell and Gene Green faced disciplinary action? What were things they did?
Yeah, I'm not going to talk to you about that. A lot of those things are private issues. Any conversation I have about those kind of things are very private, so I'm not going to get into it with you. And by the way, you had a lot of false reporting in Gongwer yesterday. I can't believe how they just take one false source that lies to them and print it as the truth, and I give everyone else credit for not doing that. And every story you wrote yesterday at Gongwer was false, and it was falsely attributing things I did and said, and falsely attributing, like for example, they say, I talked to the governor multiple times over the weekend. That's a complete lie, and it's false, and it's really shameful that Gongwer would print that. It's also very shameful that Gongwer would say something, you know, it's like a gossip rag. It's like the speaker was heard talking very loudly about, that's just false. I don't know where you get this stuff, but it's false. So I really encourage, that's why we want Gorchow here, because we need some quality control in Gongwer, because it's really a gossip rag.
Speaker, but the question remains. I mean, you have people within your own caucus who are very upset, not just about the comments about Thompson, but also about, he called your caucus scumbags and swamp rats.
I think he was referring to the Democrats probably too.
He named numbers that
It
match
could be the
yours.
Democrats. So, well, like I said, I've given my thoughts on that. I really encourage Gongwer to work on their sources. And you look, I mean, the only time that I talked to the governor was later in the afternoon yesterday. And as a result of that, we were able to finally get the Treasury Department in the room. And they send some document, which I've not seen, but they send some document to Gongwer or MERS or other places simultaneously to sending it to us. So they send something, if it's the same document, which I don't know, they send it simultaneously to Gongwer and probably MERS as they send it to us. And what that document is, I haven't seen it, but what I've heard is it would be a description of what a sales tax on services would draw from everything, right? And so I've talked to you guys. I've said it would be 18 billion. I think this document said it would actually be 19.5 billion if you taxed all services. Now, we're not proposing taxing all services. So, but I do want to point out, like, you know, how long have we been talking about this? And that's the first time we've gotten any feedback from Treasury. So what we're going to do is we're going to look through that feedback, and that's where the back and forth goes. You compare numbers and you say, look, if we tax the luxury services, this is what we think, this is what they think, and as you go through that and you build consensus, we put those pieces together for the property tax cut we're going to do. Now, I'll remind you, their document was, I heard, 19.5 billion. Our proposal on the high side is 5 billion. And you know, in a negotiation, you're probably not going to get everything you want, right? But I do want to see dramatic property tax cuts, ending the state property tax, ending the pop-up tax, getting rid of the real estate transfer tax and this personal property tax, and then we want to force the utilities to lower their rates by $1 billion, which would wipe out the last 3 years of rate increases. We'll see what counter proposal comes from the administration. But I want to be clear, the property tax conversation is the Treasury and our policy team. It's not our budget team, right? So the budget team can be meeting, working on the pieces I said, developing the targets if the governor authorizes them before she comes back from Luxembourg. And the property tax team should be meeting too. And they can have a discussion on all these policy bills too, and we can work through that. We can do all three things at the same time, but the problem is that with the governor's office only authorized to talk about the policy bills, that's what's caused this 5 or 6 day delay, and that's why I've been critical of the governor for being out of town. I think if she was more engaged in person and more accessible, we could get a deal. And I think that the proof of that are all of these false things they're planting with you guys, with false claims like there have been all these conversations. There wasn't a conversation until yesterday, and that finally unlocked the Treasury Department to meet with our office, which I was happy about. But I'm becoming more and more persuaded that we're just going to have to work with the Senate Democrats and do a deal. And hopefully when the governor gets back, we can share it with her. A big bipartisan deal, and hopefully she'll sign that deal. Go ahead.
I was just curious, is there any concern that the ongoing infighting within the Republican Party right now, is it going to have ripple effects?
Oh, I would describe it as much less infighting than in the past, you know. Look, when I was minority leader, there was more infighting than this. There have been years of infighting, and I'm really happy that we've led through that. I mean, look at where Tate was, you know, 2 years ago as Speaker. I mean, remember that meeting where they all wanted to remove him? Remember all the discussion about removing him that was going on? That all came right about this time. So it is what it is, but we will. We'll work through it as a team, and we'll emerge from it stronger, just like we did 2 years ago when we had some challenges. And I know that both members are committed to do that, and I'm looking forward to kind of seeing. I mean, a lot of people ask me, how could you get more unified and more strong as an organization? And so I'm looking forward to seeing it, and I really believe it'll happen. So we'll work through it, and I'm looking forward to emerging more unified. Yeah.
Change the topic. The Senate Democrats are going to be introducing a full slate of bills today on regulating data centers. I know that there's been some House bills on this. What is the House's policy on data centers? Are you going to take up the issue with some legislation that you support? And would you support working with the Senate on their proposals? I know you probably haven't seen them yet.
Which proposal is it?
It's a full slate of bills to regulate data centers on their size, like 20-year contracts, and have a minimum billing. It's too long to list, but we're willing to work with them on any policies.
Yeah, so I believe it was last week's press conference. It could have been when I was with Secretary Wright. You all saw me this week with Secretary Wright, the Energy Secretary, who's doing a fantastic job. You know, you look at the work he's done to reopen the Palisades nuclear plant, which will reopen later this summer. It'll be the first time a nuclear plant has decommissioned and then reopened. I'm looking forward to joining him there. You also heard him talk about how if we wouldn't have worked together to keep that Campbell coal plant open in West Michigan, that we could have had a blackout during those really cold weeks in the wintertime. And, you know, we're committed to working together on affordable and reliable energy by ending a lot of these crazy green energy mandates, repealing the law that allows the Whitmer administration to just shove windmills and solar panels all over local communities, overriding their say, and focusing on affordability and reliability on your energy bill rather than all this political stuff, including environmental justice, that's raising the cost drastically. I mentioned there, we discussed data centers, and I talked about the need to update the law and come up with a more modern data center law, because the first version that the Democrats rammed through at the end of their trifecta A lot's changed since then. And so what we're looking at is, these closed loop systems. Can we ensure that they're required to put in these closed loop systems that don't take a lot of water resources? I'm grateful for what President Trump has done on this pledge with the big data centers to force them to not make us pay for their energy costs. We need to make sure in Michigan we're doing the same thing, that these data centers are not costing us more money. Instead, they're lowering our bills because they're subsidizing our rates, not the other way around. So every deal should have that. And we need to be a lot more collaborative when they come into the communities too. So I would support making changes to the law that do that. I said that, I think, earlier this week. I've not seen the Democrats' proposal, but we'll take a look at it. Go ahead.
Is the House interested in taking up Democrats' Michigan Voting Rights Act legislation? And if so, is that something that you see as a leverage point as you try to get your property tax?
Yeah. Is that what Garland Gilchrist showed up for?
Actually, he supported it, but this is like a Senate-led, and there's a House component too.
Yeah, so Garland Gilchrist has only showed up about 6% of the time, and he just happened to be there that day because it's something that has something to do with his Secretary of State campaign. It was a voting rights issue, so it was nice that Winnie Brinks could drag Garland Gilchrist out of wherever he is to show up to work. So we were happy to see that. I haven't looked at the details of their bills, but I don't anticipate that that will move them. So, yeah, go ahead.
How many Republican caucus members voted yes on the expansion to certain luxury services in order to make the property tax cut revenue neutral?
Well, we'll get a deal. We'll get a deal with the governor's office, and we'll do it. But what's important to me is ensuring that we only tax the luxury services, right? We want to give people dramatic property tax cuts. We want to lower their property taxes by over $900 a year, and we want to dramatically lower their energy bills by about $250 a year by wiping out the last 3 years of rate increases. We can do that through our property tax cuts. And then I want to have the luxury services pay for it. So the lobbyists, the telemarketers, the debt collectors, you go on and on. There's enough services there where you can dramatically lower property taxes by replacing the revenue with these luxury services. And what's going on right now is a negotiation about what that looks like. And what the governor's office is doing is giving you the same document they gave us at the same time, which was probably 8 p.m. last night. And we'll analyze their document, and then there'll be a negotiation, and hopefully we'll get a deal that lowers property taxes dramatically.
So do you have an idea of how many Republican caucus members voted yes on that at all? That you can share?
Well, when we have a deal, we're going to get it through the House. And that I wanted to discuss it with Treasury because you got to get the numbers right. And that's what we're working to do, although I think what you're seeing from them by doing it in this manner is an effort to distract from the fact that the governor is out of town and won't give the state budget director the authority to set targets. And because we can't set targets or talk about the budget, that's putting me in a position where I'm just going to have to work with these Leader Brinks and the Senate Democrats to get a budget done. And then we can brief Governor Whitmer when she's back. Yeah, Colin. You stand next to that light. It's hard to see you. So I kind of saw you, but you're right next to the light. But I saw you.
Switch it up. Earlier today, members of the Michigan House Black Caucus introduced bills that would create a task force to examine reparative justice and the impacts of slavery on American descendants of slavery here in Michigan. Do those bills have any future in the House?
I'm not that familiar with them, but is there anything else you can say from what they
They would
said?
create a new task force to examine different policy recommendations for how to address the legacy of redlining segregation.
Is it like reparations?
It wouldn't be reparations directly, it would be a task force to determine whether or not that another policy is necessary.
Okay. Yeah, I'll have to look into it. I didn't see their press conference, but I don't support the reparations. You know, they want a lot of these type of task forces are pushing these reparations where, you know, we would take resources from schools and police and local governments and pay reparations. I don't support that, but we'll look at what their proposal is. Yeah, Elena?
Jen Flood said that the property tax plan was holding up budget negotiations. You said you're willing to negotiate with the Senate Democrats instead.
Right.
The Senate has not taken on any property tax bills in the House has passed, or are you willing to walk away from the property tax plan to better negotiate with the Democrats?
Yeah, so Jen Flood is distorting things, and you know, she's in a tough position. She's not authorized to negotiate the budget while Governor Whitmer is gone. I don't know if those things are necessarily related, but they're both facts. Governor Whitmer is in Luxembourg, and Jen Flood is not authorized to discuss the budget with us. Those things are going on simultaneously. That's why we're going to have to start working with Senate Democrats to get a deal. And like I've said, we can work on those three things. Are we raising taxes, which I'm opposed to? Are we raising money from the rainy day fund? How much money goes from the school aid fund to higher ed? And you've seen that the Senate Democrats have proposed a number in their budget. We did not propose a number in our budget, but we'll hear them out on the need for that. You know, the other one would be, do you lapse any funds? You know, you could lapse SOAR, for example, and that would give you $500 million more to put in a budget. So we've got to figure that out. So we'll work with Winnie Brinks and Sarah Anthony, and we can come to that conclusion. And if the Democrats in the governor's office don't want to engage, then we'll brief the governor when she comes back on what we've decided. But that's just what we're going to have to do, because it doesn't make sense to sit and talk about 50 policy bills instead of the budget 10 days out or whatever it is from the July 1 deadline. And that's all Jen Flood has been wanting to do. And for her to say property tax has been holding it up would mean that would be ridiculous. The first meeting we had on property tax, like I said, was late yesterday. And there have been a lot of meetings. Yeah, go ahead. But not many on the weekend. Yeah.
Are you
the governor? That's absolutely false. Yeah.
Are you prepared to walk away from the governor's team and just and about face and just talk to the Senate? Are we at that point yet?
Yeah, I'm prepared to do that. Yeah, I'm prepared to walk away completely. I mean, and I have a good relationship with the governor. I'm not sure what's going on over there, but yeah, I'm prepared to walk away 100% from the governor and make a deal with Winnie Brinks. We'll make a deal with Winnie Brinks and Sarah Anthony, and we'll get a budget done by July 1. Yeah, go ahead, Beth.
Questions. One, do you condemn Rep. DeSena's comments that he made?
I gave you my answer on this, so yeah.
My second question is, on your hospital review board,
Yeah.
are you worried at all? I mean, Republicans a lot of times espouse like free market ideals. Are you worried that that kind of crosses a line in that sense, or how do you justify it in light of those?
Yeah, so when you look at like Indiana is a state that has a Republican governor, House and Senate, and through the great work of their governor, they did a similar thing. This is a little different because there's nuances in every state's laws, so you got to work that. But this is something that's really catching on amongst the red states, and the reason is there's so much government intervention in healthcare that the free market doesn't work in healthcare. And so what I've seen is the only way to solve this problem is to put in place some effort to incentivize the hospitals to lower their costs. So if the hospitals want to get rid of their nonprofit status and pay sales tax and pay property taxes, then they can gouge people. They can charge whatever they want. But if they want that privilege of not having to pay sales and use tax and not having to pay property taxes, which shortchanges our schools and our local governments, then they should be more affordable. And that's what we get at it. So they have a choice. They can pay taxes or they can lower their costs. Yeah, go ahead.
How would the state of hospital closures align with your bill package you were talking about earlier?
So what we're doing is a lot of the, I would describe it this way. There's some very large fines involved in this. So like when you take away their nonprofit status and they're paying in all those taxes, some of that would go to the rural hospitals to help keep them afloat. But we're not, these big hospital systems, they're merging, they're building new buildings, they're raising pay for executives, and they're raising costs, and it's gotten out of control. So what we're doing is trying to make healthcare more affordable. Yeah, go ahead, Remington.
We just saw the Sturgis Hospital close this week. Today, tomorrow, they actually close their doors. They blamed the financial situation. What would this effort, what impact would it have on small rural hospitals that aren't part of the big system?
Well, I'll point out, one of the issues that the Oversight Committee has been working on is our Rural Health Transformation Plan. Earlier in the House budget last year, we authorized money from the Rural Health Transformation Fund to go directly to the hospitals. You probably know that the One Big Beautiful Bill, the Working Families Tax Cut, allows for rural funding for the hospitals. What we learned is that Governor Whitmer's proposal for the Rural Health Transformation was rated one of the worst proposals in the whole country, and they chose not to request the funding for the rural hospitals. Most states chose to take that. They said, well, if we can get the funding for the rural hospitals, we'll accept that, and then we'll put out a plan too. For whatever reason, the Whitmer administration decided not to request the funding directly for the rural hospitals. Well, that would be an example of something that really would have benefited Sturgis, right? Is that direct money from the rural hospital transformation effort that President Trump and the Congress approved. Now, we've had a number of hearings in the House Oversight Committee, and what I'm working on is revising that application, working to improve that application. So, like, whether it's with Gretchen Whitmer now or next year's application with the next governor, we should really do more to improve that application. One way you can do that and get more rural health care funding for your state is through adopting certain model policies. You've seen the House start working on that. The medical licensure compact would be one of those policies that I got done. Entering the presidential fitness test would be another one. You saw the House vote on that. Banning red dyes, which we got through the House yesterday. These are all examples of policies that your state can adopt that will give you more rural health care funding that we could give directly to hospitals. So what we're working on is adopting those model policies as a state to get more federal rural health care funding. And then we're working with the governor to improve her application in the future so that we can get that direct funding for rural hospitals, something that for whatever reason she refused or she omitted from her application, which really could have helped some of the hospitals like Sturgis. Anything else? All right. Well, thank you. Oh, go ahead. And then I think session started. I should probably go to session.
Sorry, real quick. So in Beth's report, Rep. Thompson said she won't return to the Capitol until the comments are addressed. Are you at all worried about that? How would you address it in order to get her back if she's threatening that?
We'll work through that. I mean, this isn't the first time that a member has said something like that. So we'll work through it as a team, and I'm confident we'll get her back soon. She's a very valuable member of our team. So we'll work through it, and we'll emerge stronger from it. And I expect her to be back soon. So thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.